I never imagined my life would come to this. One moment, I was happily going through the motions of what I thought was a secure marriage, and the next everything shattered. I sat there, frozen, as Daniel's words echoed in my mind. Jess, I think it's time for us to end things. My heart dropped. What are you talking about? He looked at me with those dull, emotionless eyes that had once held so much warmth. I'm in love with someone else. He said it like he was talking about picking a different flavor of ice cream. My hands shook as I pushed back my chair, standing up to quickly. No, this isn't happening. You can't just say that. You're my husband, Daniel. My voice cracked, but I couldn't stop it. I'm sorry. It's been a long time coming, he said, his tone flat, devoid of regret. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make him understand that everything we'd built meant something. But it didn't matter. His eyes told me it didn't matter. You're leaving me for another woman? My chest tightened, and I felt my breath catch in my throat. He looked away briefly, the guilt flashing across his face, but it vanished quickly. Yeah, I think you already knew, Jess. You've been distant for a while now. It's over. I couldn't breathe. I gave you everything, Daniel. My words faltered as the weight of his indifference settled over me. I know, he replied softly, as though I were a passing inconvenience. I'm sorry. I didn't know how much longer I stood there in shock, but it felt like a lifetime. My mind couldn't process it. The man I'd trusted, the man who'd sworn forever, was leaving me without even a second thought. And then it hit me, my parents would never understand. They were always the ones who loved him more than me, the ones who praised him, who sided with him every time I needed them. I found myself sitting back down at the table, my knees weak as I tried to collect myself. Daniel stood there for a moment, watching me with that same vacant expression. I think it's best if we just separate. I've already made arrangements. The words punched through me like 1,000 knives. He had already moved on. This wasn't a decision that had been made overnight. He'd planned it. You're really doing this? You're just walking away from everything we've built? I whispered, feeling the tears blur my vision. I have to do this, Jess. It's for the best. I opened my mouth to say something, but the words never came. I couldn't fight anymore. My heart shattered into pieces. How could he do this? How could he throw everything away like it meant nothing? Before I could stop him, he walked toward the door, his footsteps heavy, echoing in the silence that now filled the space between us. I'll call you later to sort things out, he said, his voice almost indifferent as he left. I sat there, numb. He was gone, just like that. And the worst part, I knew my parents wouldn't pick my side. They never did. They had always loved him more than me, always made excuses for him. I could already feel the emptiness, the void that would only grow deeper once they sided with him too. I wanted to scream, to ask them why. Why had they never seen what he was really like? But I knew they wouldn't care. They would defend him, just like they always had. I stared at the empty space where Daniel had stood, feeling the coldness of his absence. I felt as though the ground had been ripped out from under me, and I was left falling, with no way to stop. My phone buzzed, and I saw a message from my mom. I didn't need to read it to know what it said. We'll talk about this later, honey. I wanted to throw the phone across the room, but instead, I just stared at it, tears streaming down my face. I had lost him, and now I was about to lose everything else. The future I'd imagined was gone, leaving nothing but a blank canvas. I wasn't sure if I could even start painting it again, but I knew this wasn't the end of my story. Somehow, I would find a way through this. I had to. I still remember the exact moment Daniel looked me in the eyes and told me he had fallen in love with someone else. The words didn't seem real, like they came from a stranger, not the man I had trusted with everything. I kept asking myself, was everything I believed in a lie? I just stared at him, trying to process what he had said. Jess, I need to be honest with you. Daniel's voice was calm. I've met someone else, someone who makes me feel alive. I've fallen in love with her. I couldn't breathe. It felt like a slap across the face. You're leaving me for another woman? I barely whispered the words. The air in the room felt thick, suffocating. He nodded, not even flinching. I'm sorry, Jess. I never meant for it to happen, but it did. A cold numbness settled over me as I tried to grasp what was happening. I don't understand. My voice was shaky. We made vows. We promised we'd be there for each other, no matter what. I know, he replied, his voice softer now, but that didn't make it any easier to hear. But things change. We change. I can't keep pretending that I'm still in love with you when I'm not. I felt my heart shatter with each word he said, and I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something at him, anything to make him feel what I was feeling. But all I could do was sit there, numb. So, what? This is it? You just decided to walk away? I didn't decide this, Jess. It just happened, he said, looking away, almost like he was ashamed. But not ashamed enough to take it back. I don't want to hurt you. I never did. But it's over. My hands clenched into fists, and I struggled to keep my voice steady. I gave you everything, Daniel. Everything. And this is how you repay me. I never wanted to hurt you. He stood up, and I followed his every move with desperate eyes. But I can't lie to you anymore. I couldn't stop the tears that began to fall, each one a reminder of the man who had promised me forever, yet had now broken that promise without a second thought. How could you do this? How could you betray me like this? The pain of the betrayal tore through me, and I couldn't stop shaking. Daniel's face softened, but there was no apology in his eyes. I never meant for it to happen like this. I need to be with her. His words felt like daggers. So you've already moved on, I said, each word a bitter sting. I didn't want it to happen like this, he repeated, more like a mantra than an actual apology. But I can't pretend anymore. It's not fair to you. It's not fair to either of us. I blinked rapidly, trying to focus, but the world felt like it was spinning out of control. And what about our life together? All the plans? The future we were building? Didn't that mean anything to you? His expression hardened, and I saw a flicker of guilt, but it quickly disappeared. It meant everything, but it's not enough anymore. I have to do this. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but nothing came out. The words felt too heavy to speak. I could barely process what was happening. Jess, he started, his voice now filled with hesitation. I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I shook my head, not wanting to hear his apologies anymore. Sorry doesn't fix this, Daniel. The words tasted like acid in my mouth. It doesn't bring back the trust you destroyed, or the future you promised to share with me. You don't get to walk away and leave me with nothing. There was a long pause. I watched him stand there, unsure of what to say next, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. I need to go, he said finally, and with that, he turned and left without another word. I sat there in silence, the weight of everything crashing down on me. The room felt colder, emptier, and I was drowning in the chaos of my thoughts. How could he do this? Why didn't he fight for us? I kept repeating those questions in my mind, but no answers came. Then came the worst part, my parents. They didn't even hesitate. As soon as they found out, they took Daniel's side. I could feel their disappointment, but more than that, I could feel their indifference to my pain. You know, Jess, my mom had said when I called her, Daniel's a good guy. If he feels this is what's best for him, then maybe it's for the best. For the best? My stomach turned as I recalled her words. I had expected them to stand by me, to offer comfort, but instead, they sided with him, as they always had. He was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, while I was the one who was left to pick up the pieces of my broken heart. The abandonment washed over me in waves, cold and suffocating. It was as if everyone I had trusted had turned their back on me. But in that moment, something inside me began to shift. I couldn't stay like this. I couldn't let them break me. I wiped my tears away and stood up, feeling the weight of the situation heavy on my chest. I was alone, but I would find a way to move forward. I had to. I couldn't let this wreckage define me. I had never felt so alone in my life. It was like every person who had once been close to me had turned their back when I needed them most. My friends, the ones who I'd shared everything with, kept their distance, unsure of what to say or how to act. I could see the pity in their eyes every time we crossed paths, but no one ever reached out. I guess they didn't know how to deal with someone broken. I remember one conversation with Sarah, a friend I'd known since college. I was sitting in a coffee shop, just trying to get out of the house for a while, when she sat across from me. She was quiet, fidgeting with her cup. Jess, I just don't know what to say, she said, her voice hesitant. I don't need you to say anything. Sarah, just be here. I tried to keep the bitterness out of my voice, but it slipped through. You know, it's funny how people disappear when you need them. It's like they're scared of the mess. She didn't respond right away, her eyes looking everywhere but at me. I'm sorry. I just didn't know how to help. I'm not good at this. I shook my head, fighting the tears. It's fine. I guess I just thought I'd have more support. Sarah finally met my eyes, looking guilty. I'm here, Jess. I am. It's just hard for all of us. Hard for them. Hard for me. I didn't want to feel angry, but I did. I wanted someone, anyone, to pull me from this pit of despair I'd fallen into. But instead, I was left to face it alone. My health was deteriorating too. I hadn't been eating well. I couldn't sleep. I felt like I was breaking down inside, physically and emotionally. I had to go to the doctor for a checkup after weeks of feeling sluggish, weak. They told me it was stress, the kind that could eat you up from the inside if you let it. The treatment was brutal. I had to go through several sessions of medication and therapy. Every time I stepped into the hospital room, I felt a part of myself die. The pain wasn't just physical, it was the reminder that everything in my life had been upended. But it wasn't the treatment that made me feel the loneliest, it was the empty chair beside me. I had no one to hold my hand, no one to tell me it would be okay. Daniel wasn't there. My parents weren't there. It was just me, struggling, fighting with every ounce of my being to keep going. One day, after I came back from yet another session, I looked in the mirror and saw someone I didn't recognize. I had lost weight, my skin was pale, and the hollow look in my eyes was enough to make me want to look away. I was at rock bottom, and it was then that I realized I was the only one who could pull myself out of it. I sank to the floor, hugging my knees to my chest, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. My parents' indifference, Daniel's betrayal, the isolation, the pain, it was too much. But something inside me flickered, a tiny spark. No, I'm not doing this. I'm not letting this defeat me, I muttered to myself. It wasn't some grand realization. It wasn't some sudden shift. It was a quiet promise to myself. I wasn't going to let this heartbreak define me. I started pushing myself, even when everything inside me wanted to curl up and hide. Every small victory felt like a mountain climbed. I began eating slowly but surely. I began sleeping again, even if it was just a few hours. But most importantly, I started taking control of my mind. My thoughts had been clouded with anger, resentment, and sadness, but slowly, I learned to replace them with something else, something stronger. One evening, I sat down at my desk, not to cry or wallow, but to write. I pulled out a journal that had been gathering dust on my shelf and began writing my thoughts, writing down everything I had lost, everything I had learned, everything I had yet to discover. It wasn't about fixing the past. I couldn't change what Daniel had done or how my parents had reacted, but I could choose how I responded. And that was enough. I remember thinking about the one thing that had always fueled me, the need to prove people wrong. They thought I'd fall apart. They thought I'd crumble under the weight of their indifference and Daniel's betrayal. But I wasn't going to let that happen. I will rise from this, I whispered to myself. I will rise. And in that moment, something inside me clicked. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was going to fight for myself, for my future. I wasn't going to let anyone, including myself, hold me back. Maybe it wasn't going to be easy, but I was ready to fight for my life, for my survival. Days turned into weeks, and each one felt like I was living in a fog, trying to make sense of my life. I woke up each morning with a heavy heart, still unable to shake the feeling of betrayal that clung to me like a second skin. But somewhere, buried deep inside, something was changing. I began to question everything. Who was I without Daniel? Who was I without my parents' approval? The answers were hard to find, but I knew I had to figure it out. One afternoon, I was sitting on my couch, staring at the blank TV screen, when I heard my phone buzz. It was a message from my mom. I'd barely heard from her since everything fell apart. I know you're hurting, but Daniel's really moved on. Maybe it's time to stop fighting it. I stared at the message for longer than I should have, feeling the bitterness rise in my throat. She was telling me to give up, to accept it, and I had been doing just that for far too long. The weight of her words hit me harder than I'd expected, but instead of breaking down, something else happened. I made a decision. I put the phone down and stood up. I couldn't keep waiting for them to fix things for me. No one was going to save me, not my parents, not Daniel, not anyone. It had to be me. I couldn't keep letting their choices define my happiness. So I started. Small steps, but they were steps. I signed up for a fitness class I'd been thinking about for months but had always put off. I began cooking meals instead of ordering takeout. I started setting goals for myself, ones that didn't involve anyone but me, and every time I hit a goal, no matter how small, I felt a spark inside me. A spark I hadn't felt in months. A few days later, I ran into Liam at the grocery store. He was someone I'd met after everything fell apart. We'd started talking here and there, but I'd kept my distance, not wanting to let anyone in. "Hey Jess." His voice was soft, and he smiled, but there was something in his eyes, concern maybe. "How have you been?" I gave him a tight smile, the kind that didn't reach my eyes. "I'm surviving," I said, unsure if I was telling him the truth or not. "You're looking better," he said, his eyes scanning me for a moment. "You've been taking care of yourself?" I nodded. "Yeah, I'm trying." My voice faltered a little, but I quickly cleared my throat. "It's been tough. I get it. You don't have to say anything more if you don't want to." He took a step closer, lowering his voice. "But if you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here." I stared at him for a moment, unsure of how to respond. The thought of opening up again terrified me, but for the first time in a long time, I considered it. "Thanks," I said softly. "Maybe I will." We talked for a few more minutes, and as we parted ways, I felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time, I didn't feel completely alone. Later that night, I sat in my room, reflecting on everything that had happened. The pain of losing Daniel, the betrayal, the silence from my parents, it all still lingered, but it didn't have the same power over me anymore. The hurt was there, but I wasn't going to let it control me. "You can't keep living in the past," I told myself, my voice steady but firm. "You have to rise above it." It wasn't easy. There were days when the grief hit me like a wave, days when I couldn't breathe for the weight of it. But little by little, I started to make peace with the fact that I was alone in this fight. And that was okay. I had to be okay with myself. I had to trust that I could rebuild, even if it was one piece at a time. A few weeks later, I made another big decision. I called my parents. My hands shook as I dialed the number. When my mom picked up, there was a pause. Neither of us knew how to start the conversation. "Mom," I began, my voice steady, "I need you to understand something. I'm not waiting for you or Dad to fix this. I'm not waiting for your approval anymore." Her silence was deafening, but I pushed through. "I've been trying to rebuild myself, and I'm not going to let you or anyone else stop me." Her voice was quiet when she finally spoke. "I'm sorry, Jess. We've just been trying to protect you." "I know, but I don't need protection. I need to be my own person." She didn't respond right away, and I could feel the weight of her disappointment through the phone, but I didn't let it break me. "I'm doing this for me, Mom, and I need you to understand that." "I do, sweetie. I do." The conversation ended, and for the first time, I didn't feel the crushing need for their approval. I had fought for my own voice, and that felt like the first real victory. As I sat back, I realized that I was no longer the person I had been when this all started. The woman who had been lost, clinging to her past, was gone. What I had now was strength, the strength to rise above the mess they had made of me. And I would keep fighting. For me, it wasn't supposed to happen like this. I hadn't planned on running into anyone, especially not someone like Liam. But there he was, standing in the middle of the coffee shop, looking just as I remembered him from university, tall, with that smile that always made everything seem a little lighter. "Jess?" I froze. My heart skipped a beat as I recognized his voice. I hadn't seen Liam in years. We used to be close back in college, sharing late-night talks and jokes that felt like they could last forever. But that was before everything started to fall apart in my life. Before Daniel. Before my parents. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Liam?" I said, unsure if I was just imagining things. He smiled, his eyes brightening as he recognized me too. "It's really you." I wasn't sure at first, but I thought I recognized your voice. I stood there for a moment, staring at him, unsure of what to do. My instinct was to turn away, but something about his presence made me pause. It was strange, almost comforting. "Wow, it's been what, 3 years?" "Something like that," he chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. "I heard about everything that happened. I'm sorry, Jess." The way he said it was different from the usual pity people threw my way. It felt more genuine, like he understood something deeper. "Thanks," I muttered, not really knowing how to respond. There was an awkward pause, but Liam broke it, his voice steady. "You want to sit down for a coffee?" "I'm not doing anything important." He motioned to an empty seat across from him. I hesitated, the walls I'd carefully built around myself starting to rise again. "I don't know, I'm not really in the mood for company." He smiled, not pushing but not backing down either. No pressure. I just thought it would be nice to catch up. It was then that I noticed something in his eyes. He wasn't just being polite. There was a depth there, like he was carrying his own burden. I couldn't tell what it was, but I saw a flicker of understanding in him that made me feel like maybe, just maybe, this wouldn't be so bad. I sighed, defeated by the pull of curiosity. Okay, sure. Coffee sounds good. We sat down, the quiet hum of the cafe swirling around us as we started to talk. The conversation was easy at first, like picking up a book and reading where we left off. We spoke about the past, about university, about the stupid things we used to do. I could feel the tension in my shoulders start to loosen as his laughter filled the air. But then, Liam's tone shifted, and I could sense he was holding something back. You've been through a lot, haven't you? He said softly, his voice more serious now. I didn't want to open up. I couldn't, not to him. But somehow, the words slipped out before I could stop them. I thought I had everything figured out, you know? I thought I had a good life, a good husband. But then everything fell apart. Daniel left me. And my parents, they sided with him. I've just felt so lost. Liam's gaze softened. I'm sorry, Jess. That sounds horrible. I can't imagine what you've been through. His sympathy was comforting, but it also made me want to pull away. I didn't want pity, but his kindness was so genuine. It felt like he really cared. I don't know how to keep going sometimes, I admitted, my voice cracking slightly. I can't even trust myself anymore. How am I supposed to trust anyone else? Liam nodded slowly, his eyes searching mine as if trying to gauge how much he could say. I get it, he said quietly. I've been through my own share of struggles. I know what it's like to feel like you're alone, to feel like you're sinking in quicksand. I looked at him then, really looked at him. There was a pain behind his eyes, a weariness I hadn't noticed before. What happened to you? I asked, suddenly curious. He paused for a moment, then sighed, leaning back in his chair. It's a long story, he said, his voice low. But after everything that happened with my family, I just kind of shut down for a while. I didn't know who I was or where I was going, but I'm here now, and that's what matters. I nodded, feeling the weight of his words sink in. I didn't need to know all the details to understand that he had been through his own version of pain. The kind of pain that didn't show on the outside but carved deep marks on the inside. We sat in silence for a moment, and it felt comfortable, not awkward. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was being judged. Liam didn't ask for details. He didn't push for answers. He just listened. And somehow, that was exactly what I needed. Thank you, I said quietly, for not making me feel like I'm broken. Liam's smile returned, warm and genuine. You're not broken, Jess. You're just finding your way, like the rest of us. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as lost as I thought I was. As we finished our coffee, I realized something. I wasn't sure if I was ready to trust him completely, but Liam's presence was the first thing in a long while that made me feel like I could take a step forward, one small step at a time. It wasn't supposed to affect me, but every time I saw Daniel's face, I couldn't help it. There he was, living the life we had once talked about, the one he had promised me. Only now, it wasn't with me. It was with her. I saw it first on Instagram, his new woman, his arm around her, both of them smiling like nothing had ever gone wrong. They were doing the things Daniel and I had planned for years, things I'd once believed we'd do together. It hit me like a punch to the stomach. I felt the bitterness rising in my throat as I scrolled through their pictures, each one more perfect than the last. I can't keep doing this, I muttered to myself, slamming my phone down on the table. I had to stop torturing myself, but every time I tried, his face kept appearing in my mind, as if he was still there, lingering in every corner of my thoughts. But it wasn't just the pictures. It was the way they looked at each other, like nothing had ever happened between him and me. Like our time together was a distant memory, something that had meant nothing. Had it meant nothing? That question gnawed at me every time I saw them together. I began to wonder if I had been a fool all along. Maybe he'd never loved me the way I thought he did. I went to bed that night, tossing and turning, replaying every moment we had shared, trying to find some sort of clarity. Was he really sorry for what he did? Or was he just pretending to be? The next morning, I grabbed my phone to scroll mindlessly through social media, but I froze when I saw a post from him. It was a picture of him and her, laughing in some fancy restaurant. The caption read, "Couldn't have asked for a better person to share my life with." That was it. My heart shattered into a million pieces, and I couldn't breathe. How could he move on so easily? How could he just replace me like I had never mattered? I threw the phone onto the bed, feeling a surge of frustration and pain. How did he do it? How did he just move on? I got up, pacing the room, trying to keep my thoughts from spiraling. But it was hard. It was so hard. The pain was still so raw, and seeing him so happy, so content, made me question everything. Was I the only one who hadn't let go? I thought back to that conversation, the one where he'd told me he was leaving, the one where I had begged him not to. He had said it was the best thing for both of us. But now, seeing him so happy with her, I wondered if he had ever meant it. Or had he been planning this all along? Had I been just a placeholder in his life until she came along? Why does it hurt so much? I whispered aloud, tears filling my eyes as I sank to the floor. I wanted to believe that he felt something real for me, but seeing him so carefree with her made me feel like a fool. I had given him everything. I had trusted him with my heart, my future. And now, he was living the life I had always dreamed of, without me. I tried to push the thoughts away, but they kept coming back, each one more painful than the last. Maybe I'll never get the closure I've been searching for. Maybe he doesn't even care anymore. I sat there, defeated, for what felt like hours. The realization settled heavily on me. I would never get the answers I wanted. He had moved on, and I was stuck in the past, clinging to a memory that no longer existed. A knock on the door broke my thoughts. It was Sarah. I had forgotten we were supposed to meet for lunch, but I was so lost in my own head that I hadn't noticed the time. "Hey," she said, stepping inside when I opened the door. "You okay?" I didn't want to admit it, but I wasn't okay. I smiled weakly. "I'm fine. Just thinking." She raised an eyebrow. "You sure? Because you don't look fine. You look like you've been hit by a truck." I let out a shaky laugh, wiping my eyes quickly. "It's nothing. Just seeing Daniel's life moving on. It hurts, you know? I feel like I'm stuck." She nodded, her expression softening. "I get it, Jess. But you can't let him control your life anymore. He's living his, but that doesn't mean you're stuck in the past. You're still here. You're still breathing. And that counts for something." I didn't know if I believed her, but hearing her say it, hearing her remind me that I was still here, made something inside me click. Maybe I wasn't stuck. Maybe this was just part of the process. "Thanks, Sarah," I said quietly, my voice still shaky. I needed to hear that. "You don't have to thank me. You just have to believe it." She smiled at me, and for the first time in a while, I felt a tiny spark of hope. Maybe I wasn't as far gone as I thought. As we sat down for lunch, I found myself trying to push Daniel's face out of my mind, focusing instead on the people around me. I wasn't there yet. I wasn't okay. Not by a long shot. But maybe, just maybe, I could find my way out of this mess. One step at a time. It came out of nowhere. Daniel's message. My heart skipped a beat when I saw his name on my screen. It had been months since I'd last heard from him, and every part of me screamed to ignore it, to let the past stay buried. But something inside me, some strange force I couldn't explain, told me to open it. "Can we talk?" "I need to explain." I stared at the message for what felt like an eternity. Part of me was terrified. The last time we spoke, everything had ended in a mess of anger and heartbreak. But another part of me, the part that was still holding on to the memory of the man I once loved, wanted to hear him out. I took a deep breath before typing my response. "Fine. When and where?" We agreed to meet at the park, a neutral place, one that didn't hold the weight of memories we had created together. As I walked to the park, every step felt heavy, like the ground was pressing back against me. I didn't know what I was walking toward. Was this closure? Or just another lie? When I saw him sitting on the bench, waiting for me, something inside me broke. He looked the same, but there was something different. His eyes were tired, worn down, like he had been carrying the weight of his actions for a long time. "It made me feel nothing, Jess," Daniel said, standing up when he saw me approach. "Thank you for meeting me." I nodded but didn't say anything. My throat felt tight, like I was choking on the words I couldn't say. He sat back down on the bench, and I joined him, keeping a safe distance. I know this is a lot to ask," he started, his voice hesitant, "but I need to apologize. For everything. For hurting you the way I did. I never meant for things to end up this way." I didn't look at him, but I felt the weight of his words. Apologies were supposed to feel like relief, right? But his words felt empty, like they were coming from someone who didn't truly understand the pain he had caused. I couldn't stop myself. You never meant for it to end this way? I repeated, my voice shaking. You chose her over me, Daniel. You betrayed me, and you expect me to just forgive you because you're sorry now? He flinched, but I could see the guilt in his eyes. I wasn't thinking clearly, Jess. Stop. I cut him off, my voice rising. Just stop. I don't need your excuses. I don't need your reasons. You made your choice, and now you have to live with it. Daniel's face softened, his voice quieter now. I know, and I'm so sorry. I've regretted it every day since. I've been miserable, and I need you to know that I was wrong. I stared at him, trying to gauge if he was being genuine, but all I could feel was the deep ache in my chest. His words weren't enough. They were never going to be enough. You left me when I needed you the most, I said, my voice barely a whisper now. You broke something in me that can't be fixed with an apology. He looked down at his hands, as if the weight of my words had finally hit him. I know I can't fix it, he said softly. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to know that I'm sorry. I swallowed hard, trying to keep the tears at bay. It's too late for that, Daniel. I needed you then, and you weren't there. And now I'm just trying to put the pieces of my life back together. Without you, there was a long silence between us, the kind of silence that spoke louder than words ever could. Daniel didn't know how to fix this. He never would. I don't know what else to say, he muttered, sounding defeated. I wish I could take it all back. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in months, I felt a sense of clarity. He couldn't fix what he had broken. He couldn't undo the damage. And I was done waiting for him to try. This is it, Daniel, I said firmly. This is the last time we talk about this. I'm done. I'm done with you, with the lies, with the past. I'm choosing me now. He looked up at me, his face full of regret, but I didn't feel anything anymore. I'm sorry, he whispered again, but it didn't matter. I stood up from the bench, my legs shaking slightly but my resolve solid. Goodbye, Daniel, I said, my voice steady. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. But I'm moving on. As I turned to walk away, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The past, all the hurt and pain he had caused, it was finally starting to fade. I wasn't looking back anymore. I had made my decision. I was choosing my future, and it didn't have a place for him in it. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. I wasn't one to seek revenge. The thought of it had always seemed petty beneath me. But when I found out about Daniel's secrets, everything shifted. I hadn't meant to uncover them, it was pure chance. But when I did, the temptation to make him pay for everything, to expose him for the liar he was, felt too powerful to ignore. It happened late one night when I was scrolling through social media, trying to distract myself from my thoughts. I noticed something strange, another one of Daniel's posts, one I hadn't seen before. At first, it seemed like a typical update. Him and his new girlfriend, out on some romantic getaway. They were laughing, enjoying their perfect life. But something was off. In the background of one of the photos, I noticed a familiar name written on a piece of paper. My name. I squinted at the image, trying to make sense of it, before it hit me like a slap across the face. The piece of paper wasn't just any random note. It was the one Daniel had given me for our anniversary last year, the one I had kept hidden because of how sentimental it was. The same note I had always cherished, and there it was, tucked in the corner of a photo, on the counter of his new lover's kitchen. It wasn't just a coincidence. Daniel had been lying to both of us. He had kept our memories, the ones I thought we shared, and now he was passing them off as nothing. I felt the rage building up inside me, a fire I couldn't control. How dare he? I wanted to scream, to tear him down with my words, to show him that I knew the truth. How could he think I wouldn't find out? The urge to expose him, to show everyone who he really was, consumed me. He had lied to me, destroyed our relationship, and now he was living a lie with her. I wanted to make him pay, but as I sat there, staring at the screen, the weight of the decision pressed down on me. What would it prove? Would it make me feel better to drag his secrets into the light? Would it really satisfy me? Or would I just be lowering myself to his level? I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. I don't need this. I don't need him to pay in the way I want him to. The thought started to settle in my mind like a calming wave. I realized then that I didn't need to stoop to his level. He had already destroyed everything he had worked so hard to build. Every lie, every betrayal, it was all crumbling beneath him. He didn't need me to expose him. Karma would take care of it. And when it did, I would be far beyond his reach. I would rise without him, and he would destroy himself. I put my phone down, staring at the wall in front of me. The temptation to retaliate was still there, bubbling beneath the surface, but it didn't feel like justice anymore. It felt petty, cheap. I had done the hard work of healing, of finding my way again after everything he had done. And now, seeing him caught in his own web of lies, I realized that the best thing I could do was let him go. Not just physically, but emotionally. I was done with him, and as for revenge, I had already won. Watching him unravel, knowing he was carrying around the weight of his own guilt, that was enough for me. I didn't need anything more. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. I didn't need to fight for my dignity. He had already lost his. I could feel the grip of anger loosening, and in its place, I found something stronger: freedom. I went about my day as usual, but with a sense of calm in my steps. The thought of Daniel didn't consume me anymore. I wasn't haunted by what he had done. Instead, I focused on me, on my future. That night, I saw another post from him, this time more of the same: a picture of him and his girlfriend, living their perfect life. I felt nothing. No anger, no bitterness, just a quiet acceptance. He had what he wanted, but so did I, and it was better than any revenge could ever be. Karma had already begun its work, and as I looked toward my future, I knew I had already left him behind. It's strange, isn't it? How one moment can change everything. How one person can make you question your entire life. I had spent so much time broken by Daniel's betrayal, thinking I'd never be able to put the pieces of myself back together. But now, it felt different. I couldn't tell you when exactly it happened, when the shift occurred. It wasn't a grand moment, no dramatic turning point. It was a slow, almost imperceptible change. I started to focus on things that weren't him. My career, for one. I had always been passionate about graphic design, but I'd put it aside while I focused on the relationship. Now, with so much space in my life, I dove back in. I remember the first project I took on after everything had fallen apart. I threw myself into it, not out of distraction, but because I realized how much I loved it. Every day felt like a small victory as I got lost in my work. My mind finally feeling clear for the first time in months. "Hey, you're really killing it on this project," Sarah said one day, stopping by my desk and watching me work. "I haven't seen you this focused in ages." I smiled, not even realizing how much time had passed since I'd last been this absorbed in something. "It feels good," I admitted. "It's like I'm finally remembering who I was before everything went wrong." Sarah grinned. "You're getting back to being the amazing, unstoppable woman I've always known you were." Her words felt like a warm embrace, and for the first time, I believed them. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving, health-wise. I had also started to take better care of myself. I joined a yoga class on a whim, thinking it would help with the stress. It did more than that. It gave me a sense of strength and balance that I hadn't realized I was missing. With each class, I felt more centered, more in tune with my body. It wasn't about getting back to the way I was before. It was about becoming something better. It wasn't just physical. I had started journaling again, a habit I had abandoned when I was wrapped up in the chaos of my past. It was a small thing, but it helped me process emotions I hadn't known how to deal with. Slowly, I started to understand something important. Daniel's betrayal didn't define me. One evening, as I sat in my apartment, reading through old journal entries, I realized how far I'd come. The woman who once cried herself to sleep over Daniel was no longer me. That woman was gone. In her place was a woman who was rediscovering her passions, her purpose. A woman who had learned to love herself again. It was a strange feeling, like waking up from a long, painful sleep. I no longer felt the weight of the past on my shoulders. Instead, I felt lighter, freer. The thought of Daniel, of what he had done, no longer had the power to drag me down. "Jess, you okay?" Sarah asked one afternoon, noticing the peaceful smile on my face as I stared out the window. I turned to her, surprised by how much had changed in such a short time. "Yeah," I said, my voice steady. "I'm really okay. More than okay, actually." She raised an eyebrow. "I like this version of you." She's glowing. I laughed, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Maybe it's because I finally learned how to put myself first. We both stood in silence for a moment, the weight of her words hanging in the air. It wasn't just about what had happened to me, it was about what I was becoming. The woman I was now was someone who knew her worth, someone who wouldn't settle for less than what she deserved. That night, as I walked through the streets of the city, I realized just how much power I had reclaimed. Daniel had been the catalyst for my transformation, but he was no longer a part of the process. His betrayal had hurt me, yes, but it had also shown me what I was capable of. When I stopped depending on someone else for my happiness, I didn't need him. I never did. The city lights seemed brighter now, as though everything was finally in focus. I had started to live for myself. I didn't need his apology. I didn't need his approval. I had everything I needed inside me. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about embracing the woman I had become. The woman who knew her strength, who didn't apologize for her worth, who had risen from the ashes of her past and created a future filled with possibility. And for the first time in so long, I felt at peace with it all. It's funny how life has a way of balancing things out, even when you think no one is watching. Daniel thought he'd gotten away with everything, the lies, the betrayal, the heartache he'd caused me. I watched as he moved on with her, that woman he'd chosen over me. She seemed perfect for him, the perfect replacement, but I wasn't fooled. Karma has a way of finding people, whether they deserve it or not. First, I didn't pay much attention. I had moved on, or at least, I thought I had. I was busy with my own life, focusing on the future instead of the past. But one evening, Sarah and I were grabbing coffee when I saw something that made me stop in my tracks. An update on social media from a mutual friend. It was about Daniel. "Looks like things are falling apart for them," Sarah said. Noticing the look on my face, I swallowed hard. The post was a picture of Daniel, looking utterly defeated, sitting alone on a park bench. His new girlfriend wasn't by his side. She wasn't anywhere in the picture. Instead, there was a caption about her needing space and time to think. "She's pulling away from him," I muttered, almost in disbelief. I knew it wouldn't last. Sarah glanced at me, a knowing look on her face. Karma always has a way of showing up when it's least expected. It was true. I hadn't been seeking revenge, hadn't even thought about it for months. But seeing Daniel in this position, seeing him left alone and heartbroken, felt satisfying. I didn't want to admit it to myself, but there it was. He had done the same to me, and now she was doing it to him. I couldn't help but wonder if he was finally feeling the weight of everything he'd done. I couldn't help but feel a little relieved too. He wasn't invincible. He wasn't the perfect person I'd thought he was when we were together. I wasn't the only one who could be hurt by betrayal. Over the next few days, more signs of his unraveling began to surface. I started hearing things from mutual friends, little snippets of conversations here and there. His new girlfriend had found out about things he'd kept hidden, things I had no idea about, and suddenly, he wasn't the man he had presented himself to be. The lies were starting to catch up with him. One afternoon, I ran into an old acquaintance from our circle, someone I hadn't spoken to in ages. "Jess, have you heard?" she asked, voice low, like she was about to tell me a secret. "Daniel's really going through it right now. His girlfriend found out about some stuff, and let's just say, she's not taking it well." I raised an eyebrow, trying to suppress my curiosity. "Stuff?" She glanced around before continuing, as if making sure no one else could hear. "Apparently, he wasn't exactly honest with her about some things, including, well, things from his past. Things that really don't look good." It clicked then. This wasn't just a breakup. This was Daniel being confronted by his own secrets, the things he had hidden from everyone, especially me. And it was all coming to light. I couldn't help but feel a sense of justice. He was finally facing the consequences of his actions. As the days went by, it became clearer that his life wasn't as perfect as it had seemed. His new relationship, the one that he'd walked away from me for, was beginning to fall apart. She was pulling away, distancing herself more and more. The woman who had once been his escape from the mess of our relationship was now becoming his biggest challenge. "Isn't it just fitting?" I said to Sarah one evening, scrolling through my phone. "She's pulling away from him, just like he did to me." "Exactly," Sarah agreed, leaning back in her chair. "Karma is a hell of a thing." The truth hit me harder than I expected. I didn't need to be the one to make him suffer. Life had already done that for me. And as much as I wanted to feel sympathy for him, I couldn't. He had made his choices, and now they were coming back to haunt him. But here's the thing about karma. It wasn't about watching someone else suffer, it was about healing. It was about me moving forward, about taking back control of my own life. And for the first time, I realized I was no longer holding on to the pain he caused me. I had let it go. As I sat there with Sarah, the weight of everything I had been through started to lift. I had risen from the ashes. I had healed, transformed, and become something stronger than I ever thought possible. Daniel's unraveling wasn't my victory, it was his own doing. I didn't need him to pay. Life had already made sure of that. I thought about him for a moment, how he had once been my whole world. And then I realized just how far I had come. I wasn't that girl anymore. I wasn't the one who cried over him. I wasn't the one waiting for him to make things right. I had moved on, and now I was free. The consequences of Daniel's actions were unfolding, and I was watching them from a distance, no longer emotionally invested. It was his life to ruin. Now, I had my own life to live, and it was better than anything he could ever give me. In the end, I was the one who had won. I sat alone in my living room, staring out the window. The night was quiet, but my mind was anything but. I had spent the past few months focusing on myself, my career, my health, my passions, and yet, despite everything I had achieved, there was still this lingering emptiness, a quiet space I hadn't been able to fill. And it wasn't because of Daniel anymore. It was because of something deeper. Liam had been a steady presence in my life. He had shown up for me when I needed someone, had been patient with me when I didn't know how to open up. He'd listened, supported me, and treated me like I mattered. And over time, I had started to feel something more. But every time I allowed myself to think about the possibility of a relationship with him, fear crept in. Fear of getting hurt again. Fear of trusting someone with my heart. I didn't know if I was ready for that kind of vulnerability again. After Daniel's betrayal, my heart had felt like shattered glass. The thought of someone else having the power to break it again was terrifying. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my messages. Liam had texted me earlier. "I know you're taking things slow, but whenever you're ready, I'm here." I put the phone down, my thoughts swirling. Why was it so hard to believe that I could be happy again? Liam hadn't done anything wrong. He hadn't betrayed me. He hadn't lied to me. He had been nothing but kind. And yet, here I was, hesitating, holding myself back. I stood up and walked toward the kitchen, my feet dragging on the floor. I poured myself a glass of water, trying to clear my head, but all I could think about was the fear that had taken root in my chest. I had so many walls up, so many walls that I had built after Daniel. I thought I could protect myself, but now I was wondering if I had built them too high. I heard a knock on the door. My heart skipped a beat. I wasn't expecting anyone, and yet, somehow, I knew it was him, Liam. I walked to the door and opened it, and there he stood smiling, with that warmth I had come to depend on. "Hey," he said softly, his voice filled with understanding. "I figured you might be needing some company." I smiled weakly. "What are you doing here? I thought we could talk." "You've been on my mind," he said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. He always knew what I needed, even when I didn't. We sat on the couch, a comfortable silence falling between us. He didn't rush me, didn't press me for answers. He just waited, letting me find the words I needed to say. I finally broke the silence. "Liam, I don't know what to do." "What do you mean?" he asked, his gaze gentle. "I've been through so much, and I don't know if I'm ready to trust anyone again. Especially not like that." I paused, trying to find the words. "I'm scared of what might happen if I let myself care for someone again. I don't know if I can survive the pain if it happens again." Liam was quiet for a moment, as though he was choosing his words carefully. "I understand," he said, his voice steady. "You've been hurt, but I want you to know something. I'm not here to replace anyone. I'm not here to rush you into something. I just want to be here for you, for however long that takes." His words hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't about him wanting me to love him. It was about him being there for me, no matter where I was in my healing process. "I'm not asking you to decide now," Liam continued. "I'm just asking that you allow yourself to feel again. You don't have to do it for me. Do it for you." I closed my eyes, letting his words sink in. Do it for you. For the first time in a long time, I realized something important. I didn't have to make a choice right then and there. I didn't have to decide whether or not I was ready for a relationship. I could take my time. I could heal, and I could choose happiness in my own time. On my own terms. I think I'm scared of losing myself again, I admitted, the words slipping out before I could stop them. You won't lose yourself, Liam said, his voice calm. You're stronger than you think, and you've already proven that. You don't need anyone to complete you, but that doesn't mean you can't open yourself to someone who wants to be there with you. On your terms. I felt a weight lift from my chest. He wasn't asking me to give up my independence. He was asking me to trust again, not him, but myself. To believe that I could make my own choices without losing who I was. I looked at him, really looked at him for the first time in a long while. There was no pressure, no rush, just understanding. I'm not sure I'm ready, but I'm willing to try. Liam smiled, his eyes soft. That's all I'm asking. I realized then that I didn't have to have it all figured out. I didn't need to rush into anything. The most important thing was that I was making the choice to move forward, not because of anyone else, but because I was ready to choose happiness for myself, with or without a man, with or without anyone. I wasn't defined by my past. I was who I chose to be, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace with that decision. The days had turned into weeks, and the weeks had stretched into months. As time passed, I started to feel the weight of my past lifting off my shoulders. It was like the sun had slowly started to rise again, shedding light on everything I had buried deep within me. The pain was still there, but it didn't consume me anymore. It had dulled, faded into a memory, like a scar that had healed but left its mark. I was no longer defined by Daniel's betrayal, by the hurt I had carried for so long. I wasn't the woman who let someone else's actions determine her worth. For the first time in ages, I felt a sense of peace, deep, unshakable peace. I had walked through the darkest time of my life and emerged stronger, freer. It was a Saturday afternoon when I found myself sitting in a coffee shop, a book open in front of me, but my mind somewhere else. I wasn't reading much. I was simply savoring the moment, the silence, the stillness of my thoughts. Hey, Sarah said, pulling up a chair beside me. I was wondering if I'd find you here. I smiled and closed the book, not caring that I hadn't gotten much reading done. This is my new happy place, I said, taking a sip of my coffee. It's quiet here, gives me space to think. She leaned back in her chair and gave me a knowing look. You seem different. I raised an eyebrow. How so? She chuckled. I don't know. Lighter, more at peace. I guess that's what happens when you finally let go of all the weight, I said, letting out a slow breath. I didn't realize how much I was carrying until I started shedding it. Sarah nodded, her gaze softening. You've really come a long way, haven't you? I thought about it for a moment. I have. I've learned a lot about myself, about what I'm capable of. The things I thought I couldn't survive, I'm still here, and I'm stronger than I ever thought possible. Daniel's still a part of that, isn't he? She asked, her voice gentle. I stared down at my coffee, swirling it absently. He's a part of it, but he doesn't define me anymore. What he did to me, yeah, it hurt, but it didn't break me. And that's something I never thought I'd say. She smiled softly. I'm proud of you. Thanks, I said, my voice thick with emotion. But I'm proud of me too. I think I finally understand that my worth isn't tied to anyone else's opinion of me. Exactly, she said, her eyes brightening. It never was. As we sat there talking, I realized how far I had come from the woman I had been just a year ago, the one who had been so caught up in someone else's actions, so consumed by their choices, that I had forgotten how to live for myself. I had been defined by my failures, my heartbreaks, and I had let those things shape me. But not anymore. I used to think I wasn't enough, I said quietly, almost to myself. I thought I needed someone else to tell me that I was worth something. But now I realize that I don't need that. I'm enough on my own. You've always been enough, Sarah said with a reassuring smile. But I get what you mean. It's different when you finally believe it yourself. I nodded, a smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. Yeah, it really is. We spent the next few hours talking about everything and nothing about the future, about where life was taking us. And for the first time, I felt completely at ease with where I was. The past had shaped me, but it no longer controlled me. I had let go of the anger, the hurt, and the need for revenge. I had released all the things that had weighed me down, and in doing so, I had freed myself. As I walked out of the coffee shop that afternoon, I felt lighter. The air seemed fresher, the world brighter. I was no longer the woman who defined herself by the choices of others. I was the woman who defined herself by her own strength, her own resilience. I had walked through the darkness, but now I was stepping into the light. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see where the road ahead would take me. I sat at the window, looking out at the city below, watching the world move on without me. But for the first time, it didn't feel like I was being left behind. The world was moving at my pace now, and I wasn't trying to catch up anymore. I had found my footing. I had found closure. It wasn't just the end of my relationship with Daniel that brought me to this place. It was the end of the old me, the woman who had let someone else's actions define her. I had grown in ways I hadn't even realized until now. I had learned to live for myself, to believe in my own worth, and to let go of the pain that once consumed me. Do you ever look back? Sarah asked, breaking into my thoughts. She had just walked in, her presence always comforting. I shrugged, thinking about it for a moment. I don't know. Sometimes, but not like I used to. I used to think about everything I had lost. Now, I think about everything I've gained. She raised an eyebrow, sitting down across from me. That's a big change. It is, I agreed, my voice steady. I've spent so long holding on to what I thought I needed to heal closure from Daniel, an apology, something to make it all make sense. But then I realized that I was never going to get that from him. I had to find it for myself. That's huge, Sarah said, nodding in approval. So, what does that mean for you now? I looked out the window again, watching people walk by, each with their own story. It means that I'm not waiting for anyone anymore. I'm not waiting for someone else to tell me I'm enough. I already know that. I've seen you change so much, she said softly. You're stronger than I ever thought you could be. I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. I didn't know it either, but I found out, and I'm proud of who I've become. She leaned forward, a thoughtful expression on her face. So, what comes next for you? I paused, the question hanging in the air. What did come next? I had spent so much time focused on the past, on what I had lost, that I hadn't really thought about the future. But now, as I sat there, I realized something important. The future was mine to create. I didn't have to follow any path I wasn't ready for. I could choose my own. I'm not sure, I said, a smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. But I'm excited to find out. I stood up and walked over to the small plant I had been caring for. It was small, but it had been growing steadily, slowly, but surely. Much like me, I had nurtured it just as I had nurtured myself, and now it was strong. I'm taking things one day at a time. I'm focusing on what makes me happy, what makes me feel alive. It's not about rushing into something new, it's about being ready for whatever comes next. Sarah's eyes softened. You've really found your peace, haven't you? I think I have, I said, turning back to her. I've found closure, not from Daniel, but from within. I don't need anything from him anymore. I don't need his approval, his apology, or anything else he might have owed me. I'm whole without it. She smiled. And for a moment, we both just sat there in silence, enjoying the peacefulness that had settled between us. I'm so proud of you, Sarah finally said, breaking the silence. Thanks, I whispered, my heart full. I couldn't have done it without you. She stood up and gave me a hug, and for a moment, I allowed myself to bask in the warmth of true friendship, the kind that doesn't come with conditions, the kind that doesn't demand anything in return. It was a reminder that I wasn't alone, and I never had been. As she left, I stood there at the window for a moment longer, feeling the weight of everything I had overcome. The pain, the loss, the heartbreak, it had all been a part of my journey, but it didn't define me anymore. I had become something new, something stronger. I was ready for the next chapter, whatever it might bring. The road ahead was uncertain, but that was okay. I didn't need to know everything. All I needed was to trust myself, and I did. I was ready. The future was mine to create, and I would step into it, knowing that I had the strength to handle whatever came next.